It would be great to have Annet Steenbergen to set context for our next session. That's From Policy to Practice, Credentialing Use Cases Across Real-World Ecosystems.
My name is Annet Steenbergen. I'm an independent advisor on digital identity wallets and digital identity in travel especially. And Kristina and I will be talking about credentialing use cases across real-world ecosystems, which in our case, we are both involved in the European Digital Identity Wallet, the eIDAS regulation. So we will be talking about that and the use cases that we have both been piloting and that we will pilot in the future, because I don't know if you are aware, the eIDAS regulation, I'm sure you've heard of it, is a fact, it's a law, but it's not operational yet. It's still in the preparatory phase to make sure the ecosystem is ready for a first reception of the wallet. And in order to get the ecosystem ready and to get the implementing acts done, the architectural reference framework further develops. The European Commission is supporting large-scale pilots. There she is. Hey, Kristina. Hi. So I just started to explain what a large-scale pilot is. It's co-funded by the European Commission. It's a consortium, they're big. The first round has wrapped up. I was involved in EU Digital Wallet Consortium, EWC, and you were involved in Potential. So we both have a lot of experience there. And Kristina, the consortium, what is important, because I'm sure you've heard the term LSP, they are piloting real-world use cases to make the wallet ready to implement these use cases. And they consist of many parties. Right now, the new WeBuild consortium that I'm also taking part in consists of 180 parties. So it's grown. Yeah, I know, it's humongous. It's led by the Dutch Chamber of Commerce and the Swedish Chamber of Commerce. So governments are involved in the lead. But there are many parties, many organizations, businesses, universities. It is really stretching across all countries of the European Union. And so a real-world ecosystem we're building. Kristina, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristina. I currently work for German Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation, which has been tasked by the Ministry of Digitization to develop a German government's national wallet, which will hold all of the digital credentials in Germany. And we are projected to go live 2nd of January 2027, date given by the minister. And before that, I've been heavily involved in standardization, so developing a lot of the standards that are currently being used in building these systems. So that's OpenID for VP, VCI, SDJOT, MDOC, VCDM, probably all the keywords you've heard if you've been involved in the wallet credentialing space. And maybe just a bit to the picture, what's been happening in the EU is interesting, and I think on paper it's been perfect in terms of there was a regulation that has been passed to say you have to do it, and that regulation provides privacy guarantees, security guarantees, features and then there are implementing acts that within that framework guarantee technical interoperability, right? So kind of you have this privacy protection, technical interoperability, and then the Commission said, to make it even easier for you to implement, we'll provide you a reference implementation, open source, so you can take it and hopefully use almost as is, so minimum implementation effort, right? And on top of that, this where large-scale pilots come in, Commission said, we're also going to give money so that you can make sure they're use cases, because having just guarantees and technical stuff is not enough. You need to have the real world use cases, and that's where these large scale pilots were funded. So honestly, when I jumped into it, I was like, sounds great. You have all the pieces you need, but I think it's playing out a bit differently, but that's a different story.
Yes, it doesn't make it. Yeah. I totally agree. You dive in completely, wow, we're doing this, we're going for it. But then complexity hits you like a brick wall, and there are hidden little hiccups that you have to solve and that you didn't think of before.
Yeah, I think when we were doing potential, so I was representing Germany in a large-scale pilot potential. That was the first batch. I think one learning was that standards were not final. I think that I think that first phase of pilots was people figuring out the requirements, what they have to do, kind of gathering the ingredients that they need to cook, kind of like gather, maybe try a bit, create something that's not really consumable, but you learn that next time you shouldn't put too much flour, I don't know. And I think there not that much urgency just yet. So I'm actually curious, like what you're seeing in the second batch of pilots, because I think we have much more clarity, much more experience, much more people understand much more what actually needs to be defined to move forward. So yeah, is it working better?
Well, what we see now with, there's 4 large-scale pilots wrapped up last summer, so the EWC and the potential and some others, and now we have 2 big large-scale pilots. So there is We Build, that I'm taking part in, and there is Aptitude. Aptitude is focusing on the travel use case that EWC started already, and We Build, to make it even more complex, is focusing on the business wallet. So besides the wallet we just described is a natural person wallet. But the European Commission just published the draft regulation for the business wallet in January. So that is now going its democratic course, and when the European Parliament finally would agree to it, that will become law as well. And so we will officially have a business wallet, and that is what We Build is piloting. Hence the Chamber of Commerce from the Netherlands and Sweden in the lead to pilot use cases. And I think it would be good if we just go away from theory and discuss some of the use cases that we piloted to make it more tangible. Because Potential did many, and EWC has done many use cases that really are, some firsts for Europe. Do you want to go ahead first?
Maybe I take a step back. So I think what's interesting to me is what's happening in the large-scale pilots in relationship to how each government is developing their wallets. So in Germany, for example, we right now, like last year, for example, have been focusing only on the PID. That's basically a government-issued identity, right? So so the digital version of a EU ID card. We've been focusing only on that, right? Like, because that has to be the highest level of security. And we launched Sandbox last year, where we're onboarding the relying parties that have a use case where they need this PID to validate the person, to verify the person, right? So it's like bank account opening, renting an apartment kind of use cases. And now, once we kind of, I think, have that as a starting point, we're extending into other like mobile driving license. We have a set of like 5-6 credentials we want to have before we go live. So that's like pension cards, insurance card, things like that. And those are not the things being worked on in large-scale pilots. And when we go live, like that's the bare minimum we want to have. We want to have this PID and a couple of other credential types as a bare minimum. Like we will not have payments in there. I guess MDO is there, so travel is covered to some extent. But I think it's interesting how kind of we need to also align the expectations from the industry and private sector with the actual wallets being rolled out as the government.
It's important that it's good to see that one of the member states, a bigger member state, Germany, is really focusing on getting the basics right and making sure that what stands will work. what I see, and I'll talk a bit about that from experience with EWC, but I'm curious what you see in Germany is we are creating a whole new ecosystem, and the European citizen is not yet understanding what is happening. So they don't understand what it means to have a decentralized identity, be in charge of your own data, to have a wallet that is also you're in charge of the data. And that is not like the Apple or the Google wallet where you tell Apple or Google who you are. This is the wallet where the government gives you, like Kristina said, an identity. And we've seen what is important about these use cases is to bring it across. What is actually practical use of such a wallet? What does it mean to share not all your data, but selectively disclose your data and make sure your data is secure, to be anonymous even. So those are important ones that if you explain it to somebody who is not dealing with
I'm not sure. Like, I mean, in Germany, we have really opinionated population who has opinions on privacy and security, but that's a really small percentage, right? I think small percent, like majority of people will not understand and do not need to understand, in my opinion. And for me, the pitch is really simple. Like in Germany right now, it's surprisingly not digitized country for, you know, the economic growth it has, and a lot of processes in Germany are paper-based. If I move apartments in Berlin, I need to go in person to an office to change my address. And getting an appointment is a nightmare. The system, it's just impossible to get an appointment. And if you get an appointment, it's usually on the other side of the city. So to me, the pitch is as simple as you don't have to do that anymore. You can do it digitally from home. That's it. Right? And people jump to it. People are like, yeah, if it's gonna, you know, save us time and cost and everything, like, and maybe there are multiple ways to do it, and maybe other European member states have already achieved it in a different way, but, you know, like there are still countries who are in that state, and yeah, it's a pretty simple pitch in that sense.
That's great, because we did a citizen survey, and for some people in some countries, it's they think it's government oversight. And for some others are like, yeah, bring it on, give it to me tomorrow. But when you start explaining use cases, like you can open a bank account when you're in Amsterdam, you can open a bank account in Spain without going there. Or you can open a company branch without going there. These are processes that are currently paper-based, super frustrating, takes months. So if you can do that with a high level of assurance and trust, and speed that up by months, that is immense, especially that, so it'll be day-to-day use cases like payment, of course, secure customer authentication, those kinds of use cases, but the really cumbersome, bureaucratic red tape cases that we can, especially with the business wallet, cut down, I think that will drive adoption, definitely. What do you think?
I'm not going to comment on business wallet because I'm less knowledge about that, and I think we can probably integrate the functionality of proving I'm representing that company into, you know, existing wallet. But just two quick things. One, the skepticism towards government doing it is still there, right? So for example, like in our project, what we have done, which is really abnormal for the government project, in my opinion, is we've been talking to civil society, like different organizations, NGOs in Germany, and actual citizens from the very beginning, so since 2 years ago. And we've been trying to kind of, you know, make sure they're heard, make sure they know the plans, because the worst thing, in my opinion, that can happen, and I've seen it happen in my previous projects, is where government just one day launches something, people didn't know anything about it, people are not happy, and there's no improvement since then, because from government perspective, it's a final version, you know? So the fact that like our project right now has this very minimum MVP, first stage, we know we're gonna improve, we're agile, we've been being really transparent. I think it's one of the only member states in Europe right now, because in Germany, all the documentation is public and transparent. Everything's published. The architecture, the requirements, like everything's public. It's actually pretty impressive. And on the second side, the second point, yes, the goal of eIDAS and the promise of this digital wallet is also the cross-border interoperability, right? Like, so hopefully we can have this digital ecosystem, digital flow of data in Europe that, give us more digital sovereignty from, less dependence on US tech, whatnot. But at the same time, step one is to nail down this ecosystem in our own countries. Yeah. Like, maybe I shouldn't say it, but that's the truth. Step one, when we launch next year, if we have a healthy ecosystem in Germany, if German companies know how to accept German citizens' IDs, that's going to be such a success. And after that, I think extending it to other member states should be theoretically, hopefully less burden. But it's stage 2.
How far is Germany by setting up the ecosystem with the trust list and the certification? Is that taking shape?
Yeah, so for the context, when the wallets go live, they need to be certified. And really important thing to make this ecosystem fly is the trust. How do you trust the issuer of the data? How do you know it's actually the German government who issued the data? How do you know it's a German wallet and not some rogue wallet that, like you installed from, I don't know, Russia or something? And how do you know it's a relying party that should be getting that government data, right? So there's a lot of trust involved, and that's what Trust List is supposed to do. It's a pretty established system within the EU, Trust Lists, but it's also a fairly complicated system, if I'm not shy about it. And to be really honest, when we launch next year, I am not sure we're going to have the full implementation of Trust List. We'll start with having really basic, here's a root of trust. I know your root of trust, hence if I can go back to it, I trust you, right? Because if it's 5-6 use cases, it's totally doable as a starting point. But obviously, as use cases become more complicated, we should, migrate towards more sophisticated trust list, because that's how cross-border interoperability will happen, right? Even if we were talking about like India to Germany interoperability, like how do I know it's actual Indian government signed credential, right? Like how do I know Indian trust list, for example? On the certification side, so each government has a security agency, and certifying these mobile device relying systems is actually very new to them. I think they knew how to certify like servers, HSM, the box sitting in the rack, in the server rack. But like with mobile devices, the security posture changes so frequently, it can get jailbroken. There's new operating system release, which user didn't update to, so user doesn't have the latest security protection. Or the key that's signing the attestation of that device have been sold on the black market, actually, and even Google's not aware of it, for example, right? And so we have to monitor it. We have to make those decisions, and how to certify it and how to prove that device is actually secure has been a challenge. I'm really happy that I think in Germany we have a way forward. That's been a hard...
And a date. You have a date.
We have a date,
2nd.
but also we have to be certified before that. So if we, at least we have a process how to get there. It's actually been huge. But yeah, I think we're getting clarity there. Yeah.
It's a really big undertaking, and the ambition is sky high. I think it's also, so we have to, on the one hand, as Kristina said, we have to start with basics. The foundation needs to be good. I think in the age of AI that we live in, it's quite urgent that we have a trusted digital identity, and that we can verify online and offline who we are without disclosing any irrelevant information or too much information. It is ambitious, but it is urgent, and I think what makes it complicated is that we have one regulation that makes sure that each country within the EU is interoperable, but also has their national implementation. So that makes it difficult. So not every country is ready at the same time. We're all supposed to be ready by law by 2026, December 26, right? That's the official date. Now Germany is just a week late, which is applause for applause for that. I think the Dutch are slightly late. I know I'm Dutch myself, so and some other countries, but hopefully we will make it on time. Or fairly on time, because like I said, I think it's very urgent that we have it. And I hope we get interoperability with hopefully outside of Europe. But first we work on the national use cases that are daily, hopefully not just your government services that you may use like once or twice a month, but access your healthcare, receive your receipt as a verifiable credential, receive your academics as verifiable credentials or micro credentials. By law, the very large online platforms, which is a legal term in Europe for the bigger platforms like Google and Meta, Facebook and Instagram, Booking, they have to be ready to accept it in, I think, 2 years after, I look at Kristina, I think 2 years after the implementation. So that means you can log into your Facebook or your Google account using your European digital identity wallet. And another thing that I hope will help the adoption is that we will not just have governments issue the wallet. Every government needs to issue by the regulation. It has to issue one, like Kristina is working on. But in many member states, we will also have privately issued wallet if they comply and if it's issued with a quality trust service provider and certified. So we will have maybe many European wallets. What do you think? Will I have a financial wallet and a academic wallet and a health wallet and a government wallet?
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. Right now, it's a decision of each country. Germany made a decision that in Germany we will have a government-provided wallet, but we will also allow any private sector, non-profit, become a wallet as well if they're certified. But we still want to have the government wallet because as a level playing field, their deadlines, and also as much as we talk about regulation, it's also interesting that the positioning of this exercise is very different depending on the country to country. For example, in Germany, as I implied, there's no existing digital infrastructure in place, right? So for Germany, it's also, and there were previous attempts to do something like this digital wallet before, so I think it's a third or fourth attempt. And so it's really like, you need to prove as a government that you can do it. So it's kind of, I think regulation has been a good push in Germany, but even without regulation, it would have been an extremely important project. Versus, I think there are also European countries where they kind of have it figured out already, like Estonia, for example, I think have it figured out, but they're part of EU, they have a regulation, they have to do it. So how do you combine it with, with an existing system application you have and this new requirements? I think each country in that sense is kind of going through a different exercise. But back to the multiple wallets in Germany, the government made a decision that when we go live next year, like we as a government wallet struggle so much to figure out, what are certification requirements, what are, trust list requirements, that we're just not going to be ready to onboard these new third-party private sector wallets. So the decision is private sector wallets can start operating of course, they have to be certified, but they can start operating only, I think, 12 months after the national wallet goes to production. And that's actually a positive thing because, trust me, you do not want to be a guinea pig from the very beginning. So, yeah, that's a couple of things happening there.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe we could take some questions if there
Of course,
are any
yeah,
questions.
there are questions. Yeah.
Anybody? Nobody? If you want to read up, and there has recently a manual with use cases been published by the European Commission. If you Google European Commission EUDI wallet manuals, I think it'll pop up. Or LSPs, you can look at the previous, all of the deliverables are online, I know, for EWC. So there's a lot to read up on and learn from, I guess. Yeah, it's still a lot of work, but I'm still also very excited. Even though it is a lot of work, I think it's something we need, like I said again, urgently. So it's moving ahead, and we will soon have it, and we will. I think even there is some skepticism among some groups. The day-to-day use case will make people accept it. And we have to learn to teach people that they can be in charge of their data instead of always giving away your data. What they do now, to get a service, you open an account, you give your data, it's stored at a server somewhere for total no reason at all. So if we can change that and help people understand that they can be in charge of the data, they don't need to share all the data, that will also help. But in the end, it's the regular use case like logging on to Google or making a payment that is secure and verified to the person or the organization you want to make the payment to. That will help people to really accept it. What do you think?
Payments use case have been really interesting to me because the excitement with which payments community jumped on at the opportunity of combine user identification and payment authorization within the same session, transaction, has been fascinating to me. Like, I don't come from a payment space, and you would imagine that has been all figured out, but no, I think that's why we see a lot of traction from payments community to do that, like with higher certainty, make sure that this is the person who's authorizing the transaction and have a receipt that combines these two pieces of information.
And you're making it the payment to the person really who needs to receive it.
Yeah. So,
and not somebody else. And what we've piloted in EWC is share attributes. So if you buy a knife online and you need to show you're 18, you can do it in one flow. You will make the payment, and with that you will also share that you're over 18. Or you are a student and you want to get a discount. That'll go in one flow. So we've piloted that already, and that will be another use case, I think, that will definitely drive success.
Yeah, potential tokenization of information is fascinating to me. We do have, OpenID Connect, SAML, like existing identity systems, federations, widely deployed. But I used to work at Microsoft's identity provider, and the amount of information that can go into ID token is actually surprisingly not much. So this new idea potential of a lot of data about the user being signed as a credential and being able to be shared at a place where user deems appropriate is actually could unlock a lot of new user flows.
I think we're running out of time.
I don't know, where's time? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if there are no questions... Oh, there is a question. Yes.
You mentioned that Germany started this ecosystem portal and
yeah.
start working with relying parties. I want to understand how you're prioritizing your resources regarding what use cases you're working with, or what relying parties you're working with. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for reminding. So within German project now, we have two big teams. One team is my team building the actual wallet, and second team's responsibility is building the ecosystem. And that's actually pretty significant because people, when they hear wallet, they kind of assume all you have to do is have this wallet. But like the amount of educational efforts go into onboarding the issuers of different credentials and verifiers of different credentials is significant. And the approach after long discussions that we're taking in Germany is we're creating something that used to be called Ecosystem Management Portal. Now it's called, I think, Hub or something, a cool name. But long story short, it's a end-to-end place where a relying party can get all the help they need to be part of this ecosystem. And we can't do, as a government, we can't do the work on behalf of the relying parties, but we can do everything we can to make it as easy as we can for them to figure the hard parts out, right? So I think, something that large-scale pilots also kind of taught us. And most importantly, it's not just the technical integration, right? It's not just how you just technically be able to talk to the wallet, but it's also how do you trust the wallet? How do you trust the issuers? So getting all this root of trust, practicing the registration to the government API, saying, hey, I'm an actual legitimate relying party. I'm a person allowed to represent this company. I'm allowed to register. Figuring out the liability, like what happens if you trust something from, like if signature was broken or something. Or what security assurances wallet can make to the relying parties so that relying parties can make a decision, risk-based decision too, right? Yeah, and also branding. Surprisingly, like we're trying to brand. It's amazing to me. As a government project, we have a professional design agency that's taking care of all the branding of the ecosystem and the wallet. We also have a full end-to-end CRM system within the government where we're managing the funnel of these relying parties being onboarded. But yeah, that's kind of this holistic effort that we're trying to do. And yeah, when you talk to other member states, I think many of them do have wallet as a software, but where Germany is leading surprisingly is like the fact that we have production systems that are issuing into the wallet and production system ready to validate from the wallet.
So by this time next year, I said by this time next year, let's see where we are. Let's see what has happened. January 2nd has passed, at least in Germany.
Maybe I don't have my job, but let's see.
Yeah, so we would be happy to continue the discussion then. Thank you all very much for joining.